Okay, this video is going to be about controlling emotions and understanding how emotions work. So, emotions can be anything from feeling ecstatically in love to rage and kind of everything in between. You know, feeling satisfied, feeling happy, feeling angry, feeling upset, feeling anything really are emotions, and emotions are usually triggered by something, and that I'll explain later on. But emotions are your body's way or your mind's way of understanding what your heart is feeling. Okay, so these emotions are usually controlled or triggered by something you feel about in your heart. So, and your mind is a logical thing. Your mind is trying to decipher what it is that you're actually feeling, and it's your mind that actually associates a feeling with something that's just happened, or a situation that you happen to be in, or how you actually happen to be feeling at any one particular time. So, as I say, it's your heart that kind of drives the emotional side of things, and hence, you know, when you see anyone talking about emotions and love and all that kind of thing, they usually draw a heart, because it generally tends to come from the heart. Now, emotions are driven by our association with an event or something that has happened, or something that is happening with us at any particular point in time. So if we happen to be in the company, let's say we happen to be in the company of somebody, and that person really seems to irritate you, you know, they say something, or you know, they do something maybe that really upsets you, your brain associates what has actually happened with whatever it is the heart is feeling. So you could be feeling annoyed or frustrated or angry about something that somebody is doing, and your brain is then translated that into, well, whenever this happens, I feel annoyed. Okay? And the same applies to being with someone that you enjoy being with. You know, something that they say, something that they do, the way that they react to you, or something that they do to you, your brain is associating that event with the feeling that is coming from your heart. Okay, so this is how the association with your brain and heart, or your mind, your consciousness and your heart, are linked. Okay, and this is important because I need to say this. It is only ourselves. It's only us as individuals. It's only you that controls your emotions. No one else can control your emotions. And this is, I think, one of the biggest misconceptions that people have, because they say, oh, I feel upset. You know, you have made me feel upset, or you have made me feel angry. I'm only doing this because you made me do it, you know, or you made me feel this way. And associated with the emotions is your response to someone else's emotions as well. So it becomes quite a complicated thing, because your brain will link your emotions to a certain type of an event, whereas someone else will have linked their thoughts and emotions together in a different way. And they don't always marry up. Okay? And this is where misunderstandings come in, especially if you're in relationships with people, or if you're in a working relationship with people, whether you're in a love relationship with someone, or whether you're in a platonic relationship with someone. Things can become confused because your brain trains itself into thinking that every time a certain situation happens, your emotions are kind of triggered in that way. And I'm going to explain it in a kind of a funny, different way, actually, but I think it works. I think it works really, really well. So, bearing in mind, and I will keep saying this, that no one else controls your emotions. Only you control your emotions. Okay, that's worth keep reminding yourself, Only you control your emotions, and the responses that you give to someone else, and their reaction to it is all controlled by what's coming from your subconscious brain and the link with the emotional state. So when you start to unfold how all of this works together, I'm hoping that you will then understand how you can control, and I'm going to explain that as well, how you can control and change your emotional state if you feel it's not serving you correctly. So if something happens in life, if you watch something on TV, or somebody does something to you, or says something to you, or behaves in a certain way, and your emotions are being driven by what your brain is thinking that this is how you should behave, you may get an adverse reaction from someone else. Okay? Now, again, bearing in mind that your emotions are not controlled by anyone, neither is anyone else's, you cannot control someone else's emotions. You can trigger, or somebody can trigger emotions in somebody if they, we're talking mind games now. This is how mind games and the so-called mind control works on people, because you can train your brain. Every human can train your brain to react in a certain way and produce a certain type of emotion. Even in some situations where to us, maybe to normal people, something seems absolutely horrific. Why would anyone want to feel, love for a mass murderer, for instance? Well, goodness knows what's going on between the brain and the logic and the emotion there. Because everyone else's trigger is saying, well, this is a mass murderer. This is somebody who kills people. How can you fall in love with them? That's kind of an extreme example, but that would maybe explain a little bit about how emotions are triggered. So what I came up with, and I think this works because I've been through it a few times, is a little bit like a volume control on an amplifier, on a CD player or an MP3 player or something. It doesn't really matter what it is. What's good to do, and I will try and explain it. Most people, and this varies, just like you would do with any volume control on a stereo. Sometimes you like to listen to really loud music, and sometimes you don't want to listen to any music at all. And most of the time, you probably want to be in the middle where it's comfortable. Okay, so think of that with your emotional state. If most of the time you feel comfortable about and in control about what everything is going on around you, that if we think of that as being kind of in the middle, okay, and then sometimes you might think, and I'm going to pick sort of extremes here. So sometimes you might something might happen in life, and you just think maybe you have no emotional. Why is everyone getting upset about something and I don't feel upset? Okay, now that could be likened to the emotional dial being turned right down, where there is nothing that's triggering you, an event that's going on. And I've had that happen to me. I've had relatives pass away. I've had friends pass away. And, there is a reason why I don't get emotionally upset about those things. That's another video. But I don't have any emotional state. And that can sometimes come across to other people as being quite cold and callous. Because I'm not crying, because I'm not upset. I'm not feeling any real horrible emotions going on when someone passes away. In fact, quite the opposite, because, there's a whole thing for me, there's a whole other thing going around people passing away. So liken that to, this is where my emotional response is actually really, really low, and I probably don't even hear anything. And then there could be times where, like, for instance, cyclists in Oxford. Okay, this is a kind of a really extreme, but it's not that extreme. Let's think of something that's extreme. Okay, something that I've actually felt emotionally angered by, you see from quite an early age, is seeing famine being portrayed on TV as being, a really, really horrific thing and happening in Africa. And I'm not saying it isn't, but it's man-made. The reasoning behind it is it's really, really man-made. And what angers me about it, not the fact that it's the famine, horrific that people have to suffer, don't get me wrong, not an awful lot I can do about it, but what triggers in me, and has done since I was actually quite young, is the anger, the way it's portrayed, and it's like it really, really upsets me. But over time, what I've been able to do is to train myself to actually be kind of neutral about it, to have that dial in the middle about it, so that I don't get really upset and angry about it. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So taking that volume control example, thinking about yourself, and how, so there's two things to this. One, I want to sort of say how you can control and how you can recognize when things are maybe a little bit too loud, or possibly when things are a little bit too low. And does that serve you? Is that serving you well? Is the link between your subconscious and your heart, is that really what you want to happen? This is where all of this comes from. And I'm guessing that if anyone thinks that they are being controlled by somebody, or that their emotions are being interfered with by someone else, then you're thinking, what's actually probably happening is your emotional volume is turned up a little bit too high, or the sensitivity. And that's where it can kind of feel like it's out of control, especially if the other person has the same problem. Not really a problem, but it's the same situation. So if the other person that you happen to be with, their sensitivity is turned up a bit too loud, and your sensitivity is turned up a little bit too loud, and your emotional triggers are very easily done, and the other person's are very easily done, then that's where you get the clash. You get the arguments, you get the fighting, the bitchiness, the words that are spoken that needn't really have been spoken at all, or that people regret to have spoken. And from a psychological point of view, that's where being emotionally intelligent comes in, where you recognize, one, yourself, but also the other person. And being able to control that dial is actually quite important. And ways that you can do it, okay? I'm going to try and keep this a relatively short video. Ways that you can control it. And we're only talking about yourself, not other people. You can recognize and become aware of other people's emotional states. And if you happen to be an empath, it's very, very easy to do. And I happen to be an empath, and I get bombarded by people's emotional states 24 hours a day. And it doesn't need to be actually in the same room. But that's one thing. But in order to recognize other people's emotional state, you have to recognize a lot more about your own. You have to learn how to recognize your own emotional state at any one point in time, and how to control it, and how you respond to it as well. And again, we're coming back to this communication thing with your heart in your head. I've got my heart on the wrong way there. But yeah, so we can retrain the link between our heart, our emotions, and our brain. Okay? So how do you do that? Well, there's a million and one ways. I mean, this is part the job that I do as a psychologist, is help people through that kind of thing. It's probably easier to do it if you think you have a major problem, to actually go to a psychologist with that in mind, and that being the outcome, that you want to try and learn how to control your emotions a bit more. But you can do simple things. The next time you're having a conversation with someone, it's actually quite easy to do once you learn how to do it. But you could do it even with having a conversation with someone, and then taking what I call a third person stance on you know, in that situation. So sort of staying conscious that you're not really ignoring what the other person is saying, but at the same time saying back here somewhere, or actually taking a third person stance by just sort of looking at your own state. What is it I feel? What am I feeling? Where on that dial? You know, imagine that dial. Where am I feeling talking to this person at the moment? You know, just a normal conversation with someone. Just try and internally recognize your current state and your emotional state and how your brain is thinking. And then thinking, okay, yeah, you know, this is all right. This is probably what normal feels like, in the middle, maybe. You know? And then you could do the same with something really, really simple, like eating one of your favourite foods. How does that make you feel? You know, how are you internally? How is that dialogue going between your brain and your heart, feeling about, you know, oh, I feel really, really happy about eating these noodles or something. Yeah, you know, I feel really, really good. So how do I feel good? What is it that's making me feel good? Is it the taste? Is it the smell? You know, is it where I'm sitting? Is it because I'm in this chair? Is it the fork I'm using? Is it the noodles? Is it the bowl? Or is it all of those things? It could actually be all of those things that are making you feel that emotional state at that particular point in time. And again, going back to the dial, whereabouts are you on that dial? You know, is that kind of in the middle? Is it like that's your happy place, or is it like slightly over this way, or is it slightly over this way? You know, is it a meal you just don't really, it's just a meal you have to eat, you don't really feel emotionally happy about it? Or is it a meal that makes you feel really, really good? You know, it's something you could just keep eating. You could eat it for a week and still not get bored. Okay? So that's where you try to sort of measure where you are on things. Now imagine yourself being in a situation where, I mean, the most common thing is that you're in a situation where you're in the presence of somebody that really irritates you. Maybe you know why, maybe you don't know why, but it doesn't really matter. I have a situation with someone that I have to work with on a fairly regular basis, and this person just really irritates me. Their presence irritates me. And when they open up their mouth, they're not even talking to me, but talking to other people. Their whole attitude, the way they talk, the way they behave, just really, really irritates me. Now, for me, is gone quite the way around the dial. And so what I'm doing at the moment is I'm trying to bring that right down. Okay? I'm trying to sort of like... And when the person actually speaks to me and interacts with me, it's like I'm going over into the red there. You know, I'm like, bang, bang, bang. It's crazy. There is a reason behind that response, and I know what the reason is. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. It was like 4 times this person just really pissed me off in the past. And I've associated that with an emotional state. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to retrain myself to actually be, well, where I would like to be is actually 0, because I don't particularly care about this person anyway. They've got no influence on me and what they do in my life. So, you know, that's how I'm going about it. So every time I'm in that situation, I'm thinking, okay, where am I on that scale now? And over the last couple of months, it's got less and less and less and less. You know, and I'm hoping that at some point it will be fairly neutral, and where I would like to be is kind of here, where I just don't really care what this person does or says to other people or to me, that I don't really want any emotional state. There's no need for me. That doesn't serve me very well to have this emotional state every time I'm in this person's presence. So this is how you retrain. You know, you retrain that link. I keep going over here for my heart. My heart is here, my brain is here, my subconscious is kind of at the back. So, you know, this is how you're retraining, and sometimes those links can be really, really strong. And when you feel like somebody is in control of you, think of it as just being a trigger. Okay, all this person is doing, unknowingly or knowingly, is triggering something in you that creates that emotional state. And so what you have to actually do is to try and retrain it, okay? And you can. I've had this done to me, and sometimes I can do it just like that. I can change my state completely, and that link can be completely transformed. And on that dial, I can go from being way over in the red to way over in the green, you know? Why sometimes that happens really, really quickly, and sometimes it can take months, if not years, to deal with. You know, don't think of this as something that you can maybe solve overnight. It might take time. And I think it comes down to the fact of how quickly you want it to change. And again, this is another thing. Sometimes change, anything that changes can trigger an emotional state, and it can block what's going on if the communication between your mind and your subconscious and your heart is so strong, it doesn't want to let go of that emotional state every time you talk about change. Because possibly in the past, something happened that you associated with change that you didn't like, or created an emotional state that was just really, really bad for you. So the idea is that you've got to try, or the key thing is you've got to try and break that, you know. But you can only do it if you want to do it. That's the key thing. No one else can do it for you. I can't do it for you. No psychologist in the world can do it for you. I can help you to make that change, but that change will only happen if you want it to happen. And that's the key thing I say to all my clients. You have to want to make the change in order for it to happen. I can facilitate it. I can tell you how to do it. I can tell you why it's happening. But I can't make that change in other people. Only they can, or only you can. Okay? So hopefully that's explained emotions. I've really enjoyed making this because it is a big subject, and I think it is a subject where I have experienced a lot in my lifetime, a lot of emotional change, but I've also been able to help other people. And this is the one thing, it's the biggest thing that people have got to try, you know, that people want to try and overcome, you know, and they want to be able to understand. They want to know why they feel a certain way when something happens, or how they can stop something from happening inside of themselves every time a person says something. You know, it's the biggest cause of communication breakdown. It's the biggest cause of wars. It's the biggest cause of debate and politics and religion and all of those other things. All these things can be triggered by the wrong link between emotions and a state of mind. And so it is quite a big thing to kind of grapple, you know, and get hold of, because it has a large importance as being a human. You know, we are driven by emotions and states and of all sorts. So anyway, hopefully that's been useful. I've really thoroughly enjoyed this. Do please ask another question about something else. I really, really enjoyed doing this kind of thing for you. So anyway, take care, and I shall see you again soon in another video.